lesson, we will be dealing with active and passive voice. So what is an active voice? When we say active voice, it is when the subject of the sentence performs the action on the object. So one thing that will help you identify if the sentence is in the active voice is when the subject is found in the beginning part of the sentence or statement, followed by a verb, and then an object. So we have the formula subject plus verb plus object. On the other hand, passive voice is when its action is performed on the subject. It tells us what is done to someone or something. The subject is being acted upon. And it also follows the pattern object plus verb plus subject. To fully understand this, let's have sample sentences. In an active voice, we have Princess mailed the letter. It follows an active voice because the subject here performs the action on the object. The subject is Princess because she is the one being talked about in the sentence. If you are going to ask who mailed the letter, the answer is Princess. So it is correct that Princess is our subject. Followed by a verb, an action word, which is mailed, and then an object, which is the word letter. As you can see here, we follow the pattern subject plus verb plus object. To write it in a passive form, you may have this. The letter was mailed by Princess. As you can see here, it follows the pattern object plus verb plus subject. The subject now here is the recipient of the verb's action. The action is performed on the subject. To easily identify if the sentence is in a passive voice, you'll see the word by. And its verb was also added with auxiliary verb be, which is the word was. Note as well that if the verb in the active voice is in the past tense form, when you change the sentence into a passive voice, you'll write auxiliary verb be, was, were, plus the main verb or the past participle. But if the verb in the active voice is in the present form, when you change that into a passive voice, you'll write auxiliary verb is or are plus the main verb which is in the past participle form, such as the example that we have in number 2. I eat an apple, which follows subject plus verb plus object, thus making it an active voice. And for the passive, an apple is eaten by me, which follows the pattern object plus verb plus subject, hence making it a passive voice. We also have another example. In active voice, we have the thieves smashed the window. As you can see here, we have the subject thief because he is the doer of the action. If you will ask, who smashed the window? The answer is the thief. So it's correct to say that this is our subject, followed by the verb which is the word smashed, and an object which is the word window. So we have the pattern subject plus verb plus object. And to change the sentence in a passive voice, just follow the pattern object plus verb plus subject. The object here is the window, followed by the verb was smashed. We use was smashed because the verb in the active voice is in the past tense form. And then this was followed by the subject thief. Notice as well that we use the preposition by to state that the subject, which is here the recipient of the verb's action. Now, how about if the sentence in an active voice is in a present progressive tense, such as I am reading an interesting novel? One thing that will help you identify if the sentence is in the present progressive tense is that it follows the pattern am or is or are plus a verb with ing. Here we have the phrase reading. So it's correct that it is in the present progressive tense. If that's the case, in converting that sentence into a passive voice, you may write it this way. An interesting novel is being read. As you can see here, we have the pattern object plus verb plus subject. But take note that we changed the form of the verb. We added is being plus base form of the verb, which is the word read. Another example. She is baking a cake in an active voice. The pattern is still the same. Subject plus verb plus object. Subject is the word she, verb is the word baking, and object is the word cake. The only difference is that we use is plus verb ing to indicate that this sentence is in present progressive tense. Now, for its passive voice, we have a cake is being baked by her. As you can see here, we have the pattern object plus verb plus subject. The cake is the object, verb is baked, with the addition of is being, and the subject is her. We have to change the subject she into her to make the sentence grammatically correct. Because if you not replace that, you'll have a sentence, a cake is being baked by she, which is quite wrong. So you have to be very careful in changing the pronouns in a passive voice. Now, how about if the sentence in the active voice, which is I was writing an interesting novel, is in a past progressive tense? You'll know if the sentence is in a past progressive tense if it has the pattern was or were plus verb ing. We have here was writing. If this is the case, you may write your passive voice like this. An interesting novel was being written by me. As you can see here, from was writing, we change our verb into was being written. From was plus verb ing, which is the word writing, it became was plus being plus past participle of the verb, which is the word written. So that's how you're going to change your sentence in an active voice into a passive voice. If your sentence in an active voice is in a past progressive tense. Note as well that the subject I in an active voice was replaced by the word me in a passive voice to make the sentence correct. You cannot say an interesting novel was being written by I. That's automatically wrong, so we have to use the word me. Now, how about if your sentence in an active voice is already in a present perfect tense? Now, what is a present perfect tense? It follows the formula has or have plus past participle of the verb. Example, he has written an interesting novel. As you can see here, we have here has written. Thus, will serve as a clue that this sentence is in a present perfect tense. Now, to change this into a passive voice, you should write, an interesting novel has been written by him. All you have to do is to write has plus been plus past participle of the verb. On the other hand, if the sentence in an active voice has past perfect tense, which is he had written an interesting novel, you may write your passive voice like in our example. An interesting novel had been written by him. You just have to make your verb into had plus been plus past participle of the verb, which is written. You can determine if the sentence is in past perfect tense if you see the pattern has plus past participle form of the verb. And of course, for active voice wherein the sentence is in a simple future tense, follow the pattern will plus base form of the verb, such as she will write an interesting novel. In changing that statement into a passive voice, you may write, an interesting novel will be written by her. From will write, you just have to change the verb into will plus be plus past participle of the verb, which is written. And for future be going, such as she is going to write an interesting novel. To change that into a passive voice, you may write, an interesting novel is going to be written by her. From is going to write in an active voice, it becomes is going plus to plus be plus past participle of the verb, which is written in a passive voice. So that's how to change that. How about if in the active voice we use modals or modal verbs, such as Rachel should write an interesting novel? The modal verb used here is should. If this is the case, you may write your passive voice sentence this way. An interesting novel should be written by Rachel. As you may notice, from should have written, we change it into should plus be plus past participle of the verb, which is written. Other forms of modal verbs are can, could, will, would, may, might, shall, should, etc. Now, how about if the modal verb in an active voice sentence is modal perfect tense with the pattern should plus have plus past participle of the verb, which is written. If this is the case, in changing the sentence into a passive voice, you may write it this way. An interesting novel should have been written by Rachel. As you may notice, we changed the verb form into should plus have plus been plus past participle of the verb, which is the word written. So that's how to change your sentence into a passive voice. All of this may look confusing at first, but soon as you remember the patterns, it would be easy for you to change sentences from active into a passive voice. So that's the end of our discussion for today. Thank you.